Wow, what an absolute delight. Moon Knight totally stuck the landing with its finale. Series finale? Season finale? We'll find out. But I think that the creative team in front of and behind the camera here can feel good that they made the strongest case possible for a season 2. Wow, they won me over. I'd vote for a season 2, although it's not that easy, as we'll discuss right now. Kevin Feige has already said that Moon Knight will be sticking around the MCU, and the horror corner of the MCU is rapidly being established. So it's easy to imagine Moon Knight showing up in any of these upcoming projects. And I think a Marc Steven cameo would be a welcome sight at this point to anyone who's watched this show. And I added that qualifier because out of the gate, as we discussed on Movie Math on Sunday, Moon Knight's ratings are only so-so. And the show has not been must-watch streaming for many. But with an incredibly strong episode 5 and 6, hopefully others will now binge this show. And I think some awards noms and maybe wins for Oscar Isaac. I think he's got a chance. I think he did a wonderful job here. I think that would be very helpful in keeping this character around as well. I can't stress enough the importance of Moon Knight's episode 6 end credit scene. It is one of the best end credit scenes I think we've ever seen. It's right up there with like the first major Marvel, the one with that introduced Wanda and Pietro, in terms of catapulting a story forward. I believe that this end credit scene single-handedly has saved the future of definitely the character and possibly the show, again, warranting a second season. I think that is such a strong end credit scene. It'll be what gets people to watch who haven't the whole show to get to that moment, to get to episodes 5 and 6, because they're just so good. But let's talk about the end credit scene. So yeah, once again, an MCU villain doesn't make it out of their introductory story alive. Why do they keep doing that? With Ethan Hawke / Ahmet getting a mob-style hit thanks to Khonshu and Jake Lockley. He finally showed up. He took his sweet time, but oh baby, it was worth it. Oh, it was incredible. Brilliantly, this ending sets up a new villain for a season 2 who's inside Marc and Steven, the mysterious third personality that's been taking over here and then with extreme prejudice throughout the first season. It's the red sarcophagus. Oh, it's incredible. And sure enough, Khonshu has known about him all along, and it seems Jake is his favorite personality. Jake does not have a New York accent. It seems that was just Marc, who apparently sometimes slips into a New York accent. Is that supposed to be like a Chicago accent or something? Because Jake Lockley speaks Spanish, even when he first takes Harrow out of the hospital. It has a very Godfather type feel to it. I love bringing that flavor into this show. It's an interesting twist for a show about a Jewish American avatar who's working for an Egyptian god, but fantastic representation for the Latino community and a nice nod to Isaac's own Guatemalan heritage. When he spoke Spanish during the live watch-along, some of you really lit up, and that's what representation is all about. Now, speaking of representation, how great was that moment when that girl asked hero Layla if she was Egyptian? We'll get to Layla more later on in this breakdown, but I thought that was also a beautiful moment. That was just really great. But back to this end credit scene, which, did it matter to you? I'd be curious. I really hate it when some people argue that, oh, it's just tell a good story. Yeah, tell a good story about all different types of people, because all different types of people exist. I thought these were beautiful moments. But back to this end credit scene, which really gives us everything we ever wanted in a live-action Moon Knight, and really makes up, I think, for any problems this show has had up until this point. It's all forgiven! And it's fascinating, by the way, that this comes out the same week as Doctor Strange 2, which many of you will be seeing in the next day or so. And as you saw in my review, don't worry, no spoilers, but that does not give fans everything that they were expecting for that story. And I think that movie will pay the price for it. So it's kind of like a study in contrasts, in that I think while both things are problematic, because Moon Knight ends so strongly, giving us everything we wanted, it's all good. Really, really strong. Jake Lockley is even dressed exactly like the character in the comics, which is so cool. In fact, he's the most comics accurate of all three personalities. And he's even a driver, but instead of a cab, he's driving a gorgeous, sleek white Rolls-Royce limo. Now, the Spectre license plate at first, gets a chuckle. But on second thought, it's actually very sad because Khonshu and Jake are driving around Marc Spector's body and now Steven's as if it were an inanimate object. They're taking him for a ride, doing what they please, and what they want to do isn't very nice. So they're just, Marc's consciousness and Steven's consciousness is that car being driven by Jake with Khonshu getting a ride, a joyride. Wow. Yeah, don't trust Khonshu. That's been an underlying theme this whole season. Layla, very smart, didn't fall for it. She refused to become his avatar, although Khonshu's like, I never wanted her for my avatar. It's like, yeah, sure. I wouldn't believe anything Khonshu says at this point. But wow, talk about also low blows. He raided Steven's closet. That's Steven's suit that he's wearing. I guess the worm has taste after all, huh, Khonshu? That suit looks really good on anybody. I wonder if it's the same body double doing both physicality, both physical performances. However, we'll forgive Khonshu because seeing him like that in the suit, in the back of the limo, human-sized, is like straight out of the comic. And speaking of the comics, also you'll note the final psychiatric hospital that Harrow was in is called Sienkiewicz, which is named after the famed comic book artist Bill Sienkiewicz, who was the original artist on Moon Knight's first solo series. So I thought that was nice. And while it took 6 episodes to get here, I think pacing has been a real issue for this show, with 2 to 4 taking too long and shortchanging 5 and 6. I think that the story was good, it's just some parts should have been shorter so other parts could have had more space to work. But we finally got the distinct mix that is Moon Knight. Part Egyptian Indiana Jones, part One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, part Fight Club. Question is, did it take them too long to get there? Again, I feel 5 and 6 are so strong that that's hopefully not the case, and everyone will just play catch up to go and see these episodes because it's really strong storytelling. I'll mention it later, but I'll just say here, usually we're like, hurry up with these conversational scenes. We want to get to the action. By the time Moon Knight was over, I was like, I don't need any action. I want to delve further into Marc's psyche. And that's great because that's what you want. So besides the amazing end credit scene, some other great things also happened during this episode. So Ammit was finally released along with some very impressive VFX. She looked fantastic. We didn't get to see much of the actual gods on this show, which I think was frustrating early on. But when they finally started to come out, they've been done extremely well. And I would hope that for a season 2, if we get it, we would see even more of the Aeonid throughout the season. I mean, it would give us more fantastic moments like Steven's hippo cheer. That was so cute. That was adorable. Yes, Marc and Steven actually acted out the classic scene from Frozen. I said the Frozen reference last week, and they fully went for it this week, with Marc having a whole speech and everything. Their moments are so cute. But joking aside, Marc's speech was excellent, saying that Steven was the only real superpower he ever had, that he created someone to help him get through life, someone who became their own person, a good person who Marc felt he was better off for knowing. That's incredible. What an interesting, positive take on dissociative identity disorder. To think of it not as fracturing the mind or being broken, which they talked about at the beginning of the show, but instead creating life. That's gorgeous. That gives Marc a new brother. And as a result of this journey, once they leave the duat, they can now effortlessly switch back and forth between the two of them. Living life by tag team. It's kind of weird to see, but it's also kind of beautiful. And Oscar Isaac is a big part of that because he depicts it incredibly well. It's hard to sell that without it seeming like silly or, ridiculous or, like you don't actually buy it. It's just Oscar Isaac doing voices. But I'm like, oh no, that's Marc and Steven. Thank you very much. So I thought that was great. I've gotten used to seeing them walking around together in the past episode 5, but now they have to sell it in just one body. But it's hilarious. I love watching him have conversations with himself and other people. It's like having, you're talking to two guys, but they're just in the same body. That's really a weird threesome situation for Layla, no doubt. And just wait till she finds out about Jake. And she did see Jake. We'll talk about that too. But yes, now that Marc and Steven are truly one, of course, Jake is going to come in there and try and mess everything up for them. They'll have to fight him together. Or maybe win him over. They're just so charming. They're all going to become buddies. But that's good writing. That's very good writing. What's also good writing is that while Stephen is the good in Marc, it seems Jake is the bad in him, creating a sliding scale of morality, with Stephen being sweet, kind, and good, Jake mean, cruel, and bad, and Marc somewhere in between, like most people. And his other personalities his other identities are the extremes of Marc. I think that's really fascinating. I think this is great stuff. It's Marc's superpower in his own perspective, but it's also what I think we enjoy watching now about this show. It's really cool. And I think it is a strength of the character. I'm curious to see how and when he developed Jake, when Marc created Jake, especially since Marc knew about Stephen, but he doesn't even know about Jake. What is the point of Jake? We know what the point of Marc has been, but what is the point of Jake? I can't wait to find out. And even more importantly, I now trust this show to do it right. So I can't wait for that. That's another reason we need a season 2. And speaking of avatars, Layla finally leveled up, becoming Taweret's avatar. I hope it's not temporary. I think Layla wasn't sure how this was going to go, but it turned out real good. So she's like, I think we can make this permanent. And getting a gorgeous Egyptian-style Wonder Woman costume. The wings, the blades, the hair. Oh, her hair was the coolest thing. She looks so great. Steven's reaction was all of us. The costume does have a scarab theme to it, as some of you thought it might. You know, the red scarab is a character from the comics, and it's been a way that Layla's father referenced her, and Khonshu even called her little bug. I was like, gosh, I think Layla. I mean, I don't know. I guess scarabs are a big part of Egyptian mythology. But I don't think it's totally the red scarab because there's no red in her costume or anything like that. But I think Feige's clever in that it's just enough of a nod to make you feel like it's a comic book reference. And I think to some degree it is, but it's great. I think it's a new character who I would love to see in the comics. Stephen is also adorably excited to show Layla their new skill sets, right? Marc's too cool for school. And we finally get those extended action scenes that we've wanted, with Marc and Stephen again switching back and forth throughout. I think that Marc's Moon Knight costume is a little bit clear to see that it's VFX. To me, the hood doesn't quite work. The eyes, something seems off about the eyes, particularly in this episode. But anyway, they switch back and forth in the fight, and they get a little cheap on the camera movement. I like seeing, I'm sorry, maybe it's hard for Oscar Isaac to keep doing it, but I think it's really cool to see his eyes roll back in his head and they have like the sound cue and he switches. Now they just pan up, and when we pan back down, it's a different one. I'm like, come on, but anyway, and they're like, we're gonna, come on, give Oscar Isaac a break. He's about to start juggling 3 characters. Oh, I can't wait for them to have an argument with 3 of them in the same body. That would be so great. Oh, I really hope Oscar Isaac gets the opportunity to do that. And does Jake Lockley only speak Spanish? That would be, he'd have to switch then to different languages. Oh, and accents. That's great. Go! Oh, I can't wait to see it. I really want to see that. But yeah, Jake ended up taking over. They needed Jake to take over because it was not going well. And I'm curious, what does his suit look like? He must not have his own suit because Jake's sneaky that way. Because Layla witnessed the whole thing and she should have been like, you turned into a third person. There was this third suit. Maybe she'll bring it up later. But I mean, Layla's pretty smart. I think she would have realized that was pertinent information. But again, as I said, at this point, I prefer the drama/mystery of Marc's 3 personalities to like the classic superheroing elements of this show, the fighting, putting on the costume. And I know a number of you have been like, we want more Moon Knight, we want more, classic superhero stuff. But now that the Jakes, now that this Marc, Stephen, Jake stuff has gotten so interesting, do you still want that? I mean, I think it's always been hard for this comic. Like, is it a story about someone with dissociative identity disorder? Or is it a story about someone who's an avatar for Egyptian gods? Wonder Woman doesn't have that other thing that she has to deal with, right? Like, Wonder Woman is, of course, a representative of the Greek gods, and Moon Knight is a representative of the Egyptian gods. But then there's that wrinkle, or 3 wrinkles, right? And I think it makes Moon Knight a more complex, maybe a little bit more of a niche character, but also I think to some degree more of an interesting character. I think they need more time to suss it out. Because I think the Egyptian stuff still remains not totally satisfying, the Egyptian mythology stuff on this show, because we aren't as invested in it. They've spent the bulk of the time. Well, that's not true. because a lot of the show was spent on the Egyptian stuff, but I don't think it was done as well. So I think that the more impressive storytelling here has been with the three personalities, with the exploring dissociative identity disorder and how it Marc's origin in that regard. I mean, look how they shortchanged Moon Knight, the superhero's origin, compared to Stephen's origin story, right? So that's a choice that they made. And I think they're still balancing the scales on this show in terms of the A and B storylines. And you need the Egyptian stuff to make Moon Knight distinct within the MCU. Also, we now have a new power couple, or is that throuple, joining Ant-Man and the Wasp. So I thought that was nice. Now let's talk about the end of the episode, not the end credit scene, but the end of the episode, because this was confusing, but intentionally so, because that's also Moon Knight comics. So at the very end, Stephen, who feels he's negotiated with Khonshu for his and Marc's freedom, because Stephen is very naive, because he was, of course, made up by a child. He's like, I guess he's very optimistic, while Jake, of course, I'm sure is very pessimistic, right? Fatalistic, right? Versus optimistic. Very interesting. All right, so anyway, I loved exploring this. But anyway, he feels that he's negotiated for their freedom. And Khonshu lives up to his end of the deal, knowing full well that Jake still works for him, and frees Marc and Stephen. But first, Marc and Stephen find themselves back in Dr. Harrow's office, and they think for a moment maybe that's been the reality all along, and this has all just been part of their illness, that they've imagined it. But then, and I do again like the conversation between the two of them, when they see the bloody footprints on Harrow. Finally, bloody footprints on Harrow, which surprised even Dr. Harrow. So that makes me think this isn't just, and it also makes Marc and Stephen feel it's not just their mind, because why would Harrow be surprised if he wasn't just part of Marc Stephen's consciousness? He would therefore then just go along with it and be like, oh yeah, I cut my foot, whatever, man. I cut both of them somehow. So they're like, thanks, Doc, but I think we'd rather just go save the world. I'm like, but how? You're no longer with Khonshu. He's like, I'm going to volunteer, damn it. All right, so I'm going to go back to work at the museum. So anyway, but I mean, can they go back to the museum? I'd love for them to get rehired there. But anyway, then they fall back and they wake up in Stephen's bed. And Marc's whispering in his ear, and he's like, Stephen, are you there? And he's like, I can't believe you live in this mess. I'm like, I find it charming. There's 2 goldfish now, and Stephen's still tied to the bed, which kind of makes you feel like, was this just a dream? And I'm sure, again, it's meant to make you feel what's real, what's not real, which is a constant theme in the comic. It is crazy. I mean, I don't know if that's like cool because it'll make people feel like it's the comic, or if it'll make some people feel like enough with this, like who are not comic book fans, like it's just too much. But that's why I think, again, the end credit scene is so important. So what is that mental hospital, right? Taweret said that the mental hospital was a plane of the duat. So that would make you think at first that it's limbo. But again, why would he go back there, and why would Harrow's mind be there? And Harrow, of course, we find out is also, again, in a mental hospital. So I think maybe it's a shared consciousness among all the avatars, maybe? It's not easy being an avatar, right? I would like to explore that further into season 2 as well. And one of the things I also liked about the end credit scene was the remnants of Harrow and Khonshu's relationship, with Harrow making fun of him, never shutting up, until Khonshu and Jake permanently shut up Harrow and Ahmet. I don't know why Ahmet was in that conversation, by the way, in the back of the limo. But I thought that was interesting, what it's like for the small group of people that are selected by these Egyptian gods, and that, it's not really turns out to be the greatest situation. We'll see how things work out for Layla. You would think there would be no problems with Taweret, but, who knows? We've only just met that hippo. So anyway, they need a second season to suss this all out. So what did you think of Moon Knight in the end? What were your favorite episodes? What did you think of the pacing? What did you think of the end credit scene? Do you want a second season? And are people that watching this show, or are they waiting to binge it, or are you going to now go and convince them? All right, share your thoughts and theories down below. Now know what it's like to read a Moon Knight comic. I told you I didn't think they were fantastic, the Moon Knight comics. I kind of thought, they started out strong, but then they didn't hold my interest. But I think what holds my interest here is Oscar Isaac. He's what makes this show really special. at the end of the day, and his performance. All right, share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.